Hey guys, if you love QF's content on our free Sundays and Thursday sessions, then please visit our Patreon page in the description and sub to the Black Kluge tier or higher for full access to not only our bonus weekly Tuesday night shows and the alternate Sunday shows you've been missing, but also to the exclusive episodes not available to the lower tiers. It's roughly the price of one coffee a month, and nobody at Starbucks will make you laugh like we do for that kind of scratch. In addition, when you sub to the Black Kluge tier, you'll get 2 weeks advance access to each Thursday session on Patreon before it makes it to YouTube.
Robin, Ronnie, and Chris DeStefano. Been practicing that name all night. DeStefano.
DeStefano.
Chris DeStefano.
DeStefano.
DeStefano. Motherfucker.
I told you to put that accent on the staff.
Oh.
DeStefano.
Chris is... I mean, this is what happened. How do I not know? Chris DeStefano. DeStefano. So you, Ronnie, and Chris DeStefano are going to have to figure out what this guy's thing. Fuck. Let me say it a couple.
Stefano.
Chris DeStefano, you and Ronnie are going to have to figure it out. And here we go again. Chris DeStefano.
No, DeStefano.
Chris, your last name drives me fucking nuts. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you. It's nice to meet everyone.
Now it's
I'm gonna take it.
DeStefano. Okay, right?
Oh,
That's
nice, Robin. DeStefano.
DeStefano. Yes, Robin nailed it. Yes.
Okay.
Duh. Stefano.
DeStefano.
Yep.
Why is that so hard for me? I'm like an idiot. Hey, I got to take a quick break. Tomorrow, Robin, Ronnie, and comedian Chris DeStefano. I fucking fumble that name every time. Chris DeStefano.
Why doesn't he change his name?
Oh, fuck. Those ethnic names, best to change them for show business. Chris DeStefano. They'll be playing My Freaky Fetish in honor of Cocktober. Wait till you hear.
I'm trying to decide whether I want to win this contest or should I don't want to know maybe I don't want to know what this freaky fetish is.
Fetish? It's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, not fun. It's fucking intense, but. Am I not saying Chris's name right? DeStefano. These guys give me phonetics.
Welcome, ladies and gents, to QF, a podcast about Howard Stern. I'm your host, Phil Moore, a.k.a. Jim Fix, albeit a congested Jim Fix, but I hope you guys can put up with that for the duration. With me for this particular sort of road down construction lane, heavy on the con, is Mr. Len Young. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. It's good to be back again.
Yeah, and we're going to stress this one for Shuli Anonymous, even though we don't really go there anymore, because it's turned into a wormhole of, Shuli knew. Shuli knew that his producer was going to get done in for child porn, and he knew he had this. And I don't believe for a minute that he knew, because if he did, would you even get close to a person like that, knowing that as soon as they go down, you could get nabbed?
No, look, there's no way he knew. Look, there's a lot of people on Reddit who have a lot of free time. Let's put it that way. Oh, yeah,
big time. So they're going down that wormhole, but still, this might be of interest to them, even though they've already gone through some of this. We're going to cover this one episode of there's a missus here. Her name is she calls herself Rudrani Devi, but she goes her actual name. Let me see if I got this right. Hold on. Her real name is Andrena Varagona, and to give her full credit, I mean, she survived the terrorist attack in Mumbai in 2008, and there were about 171 people were killed, and she survived it. And the way she explained it, I mean, it really is something that most people would never get over. It says here, she says, Varagona, this is from ABC News. Varagona, who goes by the spiritual name Rudrani Devi, had gone to India for a 2-week meditation retreat and was having dinner with friends at Mumbai's Oberoi Hotel restaurant when the gunman entered. The gunman immediately came to our table and started firing. It was like execution style. I was facing my friend Alan Schur at the time and didn't even see the gunman. Varagona was shot in the arm and leg, but friend and group guide Alan Schur, 58, was not so lucky. He, along with his 13-year-old daughter Naomi, were killed. Horrible. When the gunman disappeared for a moment, hotel waiters ran to Varagona and rushed her to safety. Today, less than a month later, Varagona said her spirit has never been higher. She was doing therapy for her leg, and she eventually ran a marathon. And she tried to parlay this into books on, seeking happiness and, positivity. But then she starts, all of a sudden, it's not about that. It's not about a survivor's struggle. It's about this thing, fucking bullshit cult called Access Consciousness.
Right.
And from the reading, what's your take initially from it?
Well, I'm very interested in this because I went through years of being fascinated with Scientology, and I've read countless books on Scientology, and there's so much overlap here with Scientology. It's incredible. The founder of Access Consciousness, Gary Douglas, I think his name is, he actually was married to a Scientologist originally. His first wife so he was well aware of what Scientology was.
Right.
And this is a guy who, when you kind of read up about his life, the similarities with L. Ron Hubbard are so many. There's so many of them where they kind of cross over. And really, Access Consciousness is something that is born out of, similar to Scientology, where you have this kind of, I think it was known back in the days like transpersonal psychology, which is an attempt to try to integrate like spiritual aspects of life into the framework of contemporary psychology. So the cynic, maybe I might think, well, what you're trying to do is you're trying to you're trying to give credibility to something that can't really be proven. Now, that would be the cynic in me would say that, but maybe that's not the case. But anyway, he got into this. And as you're probably going to talk about, he claimed to be in touch with Rasputin. He used to put on a Russian accent. He also then claimed to be in touch with an ancient race of aliens called the Novians. Now, interesting enough, it's the Novians who came up with the core tenets of Access Consciousness, which is this idea of the bars. And there's 32 points on your skull, apparently, according to Access Consciousness, that are linked directly to unconscious upset or stress or trauma associated with past lives that you've lived, right? So there's a huge overlap with Scientology here. Yeah. And if maybe I'll just very briefly outline the business model for Access Consciousness, and you can tell me maybe what it reminds you of, right? So how this thing works is, Access Consciousness works is, Gary Douglas owns the copyright to this whole religion, if you want to call it that. Right. What if you want to become one of these Access Consciousness practitioners? You have to pay at least between $30,000 and $50,000 to get in. Once you get in, then you have to do a yearly course that costs thousands, over 10,000, just to retain your accreditation. But once you pay all that, you can then charge people $600 an hour to touch their head and make them believe that they're curing stuff that they never knew they had in the first place. So, and stuff they did know. I mean, Shuli's wife is paying 600 quid to probably get over the shame and guilt of being married to someone who, spends all his days making fun of a degenerate. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like, that's really like, so it really is, to anyone looking at this, it's a pyramid scheme. That's really what it is. And what Gary Douglas has done is similar to Scientology. A lot of the negative sides of this, like in terms of the occult, Rasputin, his obsession with these oversexed people in history, that's all been scrubbed, right? So all that stuff, you won't find any of that. If you look up Access Consciousness, it's framed as a sort of new age, but valid and not a pseudoscientific thing, But do you remember those old people will know these. We're called the phrenology, and you'd have this head, and it would have all these different parts of the head that would represent all these things. That's kind of a figure of fun now because it was debunked about 150 years ago. It's garbage. Right. But the access consciousness kind of is similar to that, in that, you know, you could touch someone's head. And now, by the way, I just like to say also here that I'm not saying that massage and cranial massage and relaxation and meditation doesn't have benefits. Of course it does, right? But it's very easy. These benefits are very hard to measure, and it's very easy to conflate things that happen naturally, like when you have kind of adrenaline and all sorts of like you have all sorts of natural processes in the body that will make pain management better, all these things. You can conflate those easily with this garbage, and I think that's what's probably happening here with access consciousness. People are getting benefit from it, but attributing it to this stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, the article that we both came across was from McGill University website. The author's name is Jonathan Jerry, and he's got a master's in science. It was released last July 12th, and basically he was explaining. He's giving you all the fine points. He says the tip of access consciousness iceberg consists of a simple premise. Your head has 32 points, somehow referred to as bars. Although after reading this, you're going to want to head to a bar. Each point, much like in the debunked pseudoscience known as phrenology, represents something like creativity or gratitude. According to the theory, our limitations can be released by a trained practitioner gently touching these points and allowing us to live out our full potential. Not making enough money? That's because your money point hasn't been rubbed by a specialized therapist. Pardon me.
I mean, he's being facetious, but he's not incorrect. You know what I mean?
No, well, that's the funniest thing. Like he's being sarcastic all the way through, but it's a well-written article. Yeah. So they'll read one more paragraph and then we'll go on to it, because Shuli, his wife, got in touch with this woman, and through her, like, she found out through the jigs and reels, they said, oh, well, I've got a podcast, and oh, maybe you want to talk to my husband. And at that point, I think the date will be on the YouTube video itself, although I ripped it and I upped mixed the sound a little better. It will tell you that's around the time Shuli was not even 15 or 20 episodes into his channel when he left the Stern Show. Mm-hmm. And her channel, she hasn't released anything in 7 months. She's on to something else, or she's too busy, or she realized the sad metrics of looking at, like, her channel was worse than Shuli's ever was. And at that time, Shuli wasn't doing anything. And even the episode with Shuli still only has like 37 clicks. Yeah. So
38 now.
38. Unfortunately, I contributed to that. The claimed benefits are recycled from every miraculous intervention marketed online, from bringing about relaxation and mental clarity to boosting your energy to affecting your weight, sleep, sex, and bank account. More on that later. One practitioner testified that her client managed to stop their antidepressants after she ran their bars. Just in case regulatory agencies are paying attention, I didn't see anyone directly claiming curative powers. Rather, they, quote, help the body heal itself, unquote, which at this point is basically a road sign pointing in the direction of woo-wooville.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, well, that's very important that he makes that distinction there, because that is how Gary Douglas has managed to avoid unwelcome scrutiny, and it's how L. Ron Hubbard skirted the law in the 50s when his original draft of Scientology was called Dianetics, and that was trashed by the American Psychiatric Association. So he turned it into a religion, right? So first of all, it was tax-free, and second of all, it wouldn't have to be held to any kind of scientific scrutiny.
If you read the article, it's just disturbing. It goes into the Dane here and what's his name? Dane was the what's Douglas fella? What's his name? Gary Douglas, yeah. So the stuff that they were talking about, actively getting teenagers to sign up, you get a discount if you're 16, between 16 and 17. Yeah. And saying he was quoted as saying young children are incredibly sexy. I mean, in most universes, you would get yourself in jail for this kind of shit. So
no, I mean, you're calling the cops, or at best, or you're rugby tackling them to the ground. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
There is no way you can rationalize a comment like that. Now, he did try to rationalize it, and he said, well, when I say sexy, I don't mean it in a traditional sexual way. Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Like, come on, there's no way to justify that comment.
Yeah, I didn't mean red when I said red. I meant,
Yeah,
red.
my definition of red, my truth.
You got
not the law.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So at this point, Shuli was doing a favor to his wife, who was maybe she was going to get like a kickback, or maybe she was going to get some discount by having Shuli on the show, as if it was going to be some channel. And I've got it. And
that's it.
and
that's
and so
happened, I think.
That's exactly what it is. And they discuss it. What's really, I guess, it's not surprising to anybody who hates Shuli already, the misplaced arrogance and the lies that he tells about the avenue, like the blueprint to why he left the Stern show are, we're going to just unfold them, because this is about an hour and 7 minutes or so, and it's going to be a two-parter, and you will be able to cut it up bit by bit. So we'll start it off with Miss Devi herself.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Thank you again for joining me for the Get Happy podcast with me, your host, Rudrani Devi.
And she's clearly going to the Rhea Perlman School of Beauty. But I'm not going to, listen, she survived a terrorist attack fine.
Yeah,
but, she's putting herself out there. So, this is part of what comes with the dinner. I mean, if you're going to, and the whole idea that she was going to use this as some kind of, like, literally no one was paying attention to any of her videos. The only videos they got about 1,000, I assume, are people who she interviewed, who told their followers, look, check me out on this channel. I did an interview with so-and-so, and they got the cursory 1,000, and that was it.
It looks that way. Yeah, that's certainly how it appears.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise, it's me again. And I'm a certified facilitator of Access Consciousness, as all of you know. And I have been interviewing several of my cohorts in this Access Consciousness movement throughout this podcast. But today I wanted to do something a little different and step outside of the box. I am delighted to introduce you guys to my next guest, Shuli Agar. Please Google him right now.
You'd have to. It was one of the worst intros I've ever. Imagine going on Carson at the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Said, our next guest, well, you'll have to Google him. Here he is, Joe Smith.
I promise you he's good.
Yeah.
Take a minute to Google him. This guy is stand-up comic, was on the Howard Stern show for 20 years. From what I understand, he was a devoted listener, and evidently the ratings must have gone up because Howard invited him to play.
That's the funniest thing. So she gives him this bullshit, like she's made a mess of it. I don't know if she took the wife's recommendation or she casually looked him up. But if you went by looking on Shuli's website for the information, of course you're going to make those mistakes.
Oh yeah, he did have a website back. I remember looking at it back in these days where he had swag. You could buy a Shuli. It's what was he? There was some really bad sayings and slogans he had on it. It's shoe day or something. I can't remember.
Here's the shoes, like the news.
Yeah.
And then this pandemic thing happened, and he takes a vacation, visits a friend in Huntsville. I believe that's how the story goes. I'm going to let him tell it, and falls in love with this area. Now, I'm just down the road in Nashville, Tennessee, as y'all know, and it's gorgeous here. And, unfortunately, a lot of people found out and they all started moving here during the pandemic. And we're so crowded now. I'm like, okay, you invaders. And so, you got it going, Shuli. I mean, it's like you find this place and it would work for your family and it's away from all the craziness.
It's the buildup is too much. I like the fact that Shuli is he's not putting his face in his armpit going, I can't stand this. This is awful. I'm really not that person, but he's fine with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely not a problem.
No. If the also Sprach Zarathustra music came in like Elvis's shows when they started up and the spotlight came on him, he would be more than happy. He's got that inflated sense of ego. So,
but I want you to tell the story.
Yeah, it is.
So for no further ado, I want to introduce Shuli, who also has a podcast, The Shuli Show, which is phenomenal. And that kind of came out of all of this, from what I understand. So would you please introduce yourself the way you'd like to be introduced? You want the people to know you, all the things, who you are, what you be.
Well, I mean, first of all, that was a great job, and thank you for having me, Rudrani. I've met you. See, look at this dog, right? This dog sits here quietly the whole time. The second the mic goes on, she gets her loudest squeak toy and is going to sit here and torture me.
So the dog managed to overshadow Shuli, which doesn't seem to take too much based on the Killers of Comedy shows.
Well, there's 20 years of working in a professional broadcasting on a show. Yeah.
Oh, big time.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah, let me let her out upstairs so she can torture the family. Give me 1 second.
Oh, no worries, no worries. So I'm just going to tell you a little background about Shuli. Very interestingly enough, I met him through his wife. I was teaching a bars class here in Nashville, Tennessee, and she came down with some of her friends from Huntsville, and we became fast friends. And then when she told me about her husband, I said, oh, he's got a podcast. I've got a podcast, and I wonder if he'd be a good fit. And so she, we got to talking on a Zoom call very similar to this one. And I got to tell you, I really dig these people's vibe.
Like radical man.
Yeah, it's that $600 vibe these people have.
Well,
I think it's more, you scratch my back, I'll run your bars kind of a relationship, quid pro quo going on here.
Well, we did say to each other, and we're not going to go after Shuli's wife because that's just a little too low for us, I suppose. Not that we mind going after Howard's wife, but she puts herself out there. Now, she interviewed Shuli's wife, and we're not going to play it, but at one point she says she's married to world famous comic Shuli Egar, and then the wife just kind of gives this blank stare, and then when she gets a chance to speak, she goes, yes, he does stand-up comedy, wanting to temper it, which I don't blame her. Like you wouldn't be able to, like if someone introduced you as an author and all you did was, I don't know, you helped a spelling bee, you'd be embarrassed. You should be embarrassed.
Yeah, and look, I've said this probably before talking about Shuli. I will kind of defend him in one sense here, in that in life, it's always important to try and put your best foot forward. And it's always important to try and sell yourself, always. Yeah. And it's not easy at times, especially when you're starting out. But at the same time, like I work with people who do this, and they're useless, but they carry themselves like they're great, and they tend to do well in life, people like that. But I think with Shuli, it's just hard watching this because he thinks he's fucking Tony Robbins here, the way he's going on when we hear him. But yet, the numbers and the metrics at the time, and then knowing what he went on to be suddenly pigeonholed and completely dependent on doing, which is the Stuttering John stuff. None of this adds up and makes any sense at all.
He's Stony Robbins. Fucking loser. Oh, Lord.
I welcome them with open arms to the South. So welcome to the South, Shuli.
Thank you for having me. My first thing I wanted to do when I got to the South was get a nice big dog. I haven't had a big dog in years. Grew up with big dogs, and Alabama's great. I got a big dog, came with a big gun. They really know what they're doing out here. It's a good system.
Crickets. Like what you're going to find during the video, guys, the jokes he tries to go for, like he crowbars them in with all the subtlety of an elephant's dick, but they land so flat because they're not eliciting any laughter from the host, because she's going, like, she does laugh a couple times, but he's not getting a witty conversation. You're going to get laughs. You, the viewer, should be laughing, not the person who's the host necessarily.
Sure. I think also, with Shuli, he if he was funny, it would be a Stern Show style sensibility, which, given her introduction, she has no experience of. She never listened to Howard, so he's got two things going against him here.
Oh yeah,
you had a big dog in Israel, or?
Oh yeah. Well, so let's start at the beginning. I'm a comic. I'm now a broadcaster. I was a employee of the Howard Stern Show for over a decade, almost 20 years. But if you count me starting out as a caller to the show, then I guess you could say it's about 20 years.
Just because I shopped at a bakery for 5 years doesn't mean I worked at a bakery for 5 years.
Yeah, I mean that that is it. And one of the things of living in 2025 and having the internet, as we know here, sitting here,
Yeah.
you can have your own show. You can have a podcast. You know, getting listeners is a hard part, but putting it together isn't. You just throw a couple of $100 at it and you can put a show up, and but it doesn't necessarily, it's not a broadcaster in the Gene Shepherd sense of the word, or the, you know what I mean, in the classical sense of the word. Because being a broadcaster, you had to earn it. But nowadays, it's the not getting the title, it's getting the audience is the hard part.
Yeah.
Worth of experience with the show. I was a big fan of the show growing up. It really was something so different. It captured my attention. It kind of helped mold my sense of humor, and I loved it. I was a big fan for over 10 years before I ever called into the show. So. But we were born in Israel. My family, I'm the youngest of 3 boys. My folks, I was the accident.
Yeah, you certainly were. Your mom should have swallowed, shithead. You said it. I think you called it before any of these videos came out, that he has the demeanor and the attitude of a spoiled baby, like the baby of any family.
Well, yeah, but that could be for a number of things. There could be an inherent insecurity there, which is, I don't care about anything. So if you reject me, I don't care. I'm too cool for this anyway. So there is a bit of that with Shuli. He's always had that. Mm-hmm. And where he gets that from, whether it's a genuine arrogance or it's a put on because he's insecure, we need someone with a qualification to maybe assert that.
Yeah, and I think someone closer to him would be able to answer that a little better. And I'd say there is a massive insecurity in there, but I don't think you'll see it from him, except in those rare videos where, the whack pack versus Artie, the hack pack, sorry, not the whack pack, the hack pack versus Artie. That was a perfect example of Shuli not quite getting that you've just let the mask slip, and now this 13 years of doing stand-up is gone, vanishes like a fart in the wind because some guy said your comedy stunk.
Yeah, and Shuli is along with a few other people on the Stern Show, is someone who, for his own good, really should have got out of there a long time ago. But didn't have any other options. Sal is the same, Richard is the same. There was no one looking for them, and that's the reason why they were paid a pittance, and that's the reason why they stayed there. But the problem Shuli knows acutely, especially it was dawning on him around this time, and would only get even clearer in his mind, is that there was no demand for him at all. And to go from a show that had so many listeners at one point, especially when he was on it, to go straight into doing a podcast and have that little interest, says a lot about him, but also about how many people were actually listening to Stern by this time.
100%. And I mean, you would have thought at least residually, like a 0.25% of whoever was a fan back in the day would have tuned in. And they did tune in for the initial episode, hoping there was going to be some revelations, whatever. And he's going to go on here and talk about how I'm not afraid to talk about anything, but he is afraid because he didn't really talk about any of it. He just explained why he felt he had to leave, and he's going to do that here. But at the same time, it's at odds with the persona. Like, I'm a rebel. I'm going to tell anything I want to do anytime. I don't jive with management. But you were a stooge until you left.
Yeah.
So it's a false bravado.
That wasn't supposed to be here. And my mom, kept her mouth shut, didn't say anything to anybody, and powered through and had me. And then after they had me, my folks wanted to move. They wanted to leave Israel. The reality of it is they had a hunch that things wouldn't mellow out over there anytime soon, and they didn't want their sons going to the military because my father had just lost his brother in the 6-Day War, who I'm named after. And so my mom basically said, the buck stops here. They're not going. They gathered their family and about 30 grand and came to the United States, knew a handful of people, if that, and started running as soon as they landed on their feet. I remember my dad, rented a space to have a deli in an office building. And then from that, my mom started working over at this bank.
It's just the same as it's a classic immigrant story.
Yeah.
There's my parents were the same, except different country, different circumstances. They were leaving essentially a civil war situation. But I mean, if you're an Israeli couple, the odds that there's going to be a conflict within the decade involving your kids maybe being in the military was always a possibility since I've been able to read the news, and so I don't blame his parents for making that move.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? I have nothing but respect for people who had to do that, because it mustn't have been easy.
No.
But I suppose we have to put everything in context. It sounds very difficult now, but back in those days, it was just what people did. People from Ireland went over, people from all over didn't speak the language. Now it's certainly something that would seem certainly a lot more impressive than back then.
Yep.
And then my dad sold that and bought a car wash, and like these two just hustled. They hustled their ass off for us to give us a better up, and they took a lot of flack for it too. They had family and friends in Israel that were like, "You guys too good to serve in the military like my kids, like we did." Blah blah blah. Well, really, it's your choice as a parent what kind of life you want for your kids, and they risked all that, and they thumbed their nose at everybody talking smack, and they were like, we're going to do this for our family. So they really, they came to a place where they barely had any resources, didn't even speak the language for us. Right. And so
I love that. I mean, in Access, we call that following your knowing, regardless if everybody thinks you're out of your mind.
Right.
It's like, what's going to work for you, regardless of what everybody else is telling you is going to work for you. Because what's working for them, that's fine. But they're like, why can't you do what we're doing?
Yeah, let's throw a little access consciousness plug in there, by the way.
Yeah, and also, I think people like Jimmy Savile probably believe that as well. You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of ways. That access consciousness, techniques within it that it uses to shut down criticism and shut down, most importantly, critical thought within its own members. And what she's just saying there is exactly that. That is come directly from the head, and that is used as a tool to push back against criticism and to also justify behavior that other people or family members are saying, are you sure this is good? Or, it's interesting to hear her say that.
Well, she mentions, I don't know if it's in this episode or the one where she goes on his show, and she discusses having cut off ties with most of her family, if not all of her family. And she didn't elaborate, except for she said, or she did say a little bit about how she was, corporal punishment, she was punished physically as a kid by her dad. Okay, I can see why you want to get rid of him, but on her Instagram shows that she's got some connection with her mother and what have you. So she clearly had to deal with some stuff in her life to go some route.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with whatever you use to crutch you to the next level or to maintain your equilibrium. I do have a problem when it's cult related in the idea of fleecing people for money to make a buck for yourself. That's where he and her have equanimity in this podcast. They're two hustlers. They're two hustlers of different kinds, different nationalities, whatever. And so just to give you an example, I mean, we can think of any number of people who've survived terrorist actions, who have survived, plane crashes, all kinds of horrific things. And how do they typically become inspirational? Well, they're like Terry Fox. They're going to try to run across Canada for cancer. They're not there looking to get their face in every fucking publication. They're just doing it, and people are catching up to it. If you have to make it a hustle, I think there's something inherently wrong with the approach.
Definitely. I mean, there was a guy, you might have heard of him. His name was Brian Keenan. He was held hostage in Beirut in the late 80s for 4 years. I remember he went on Irish TV the day after he was released, after sitting in a room on his own for 4 years. And he spoke very intelligently and openly. And he did put out a book about his life, but that was it. Never heard from him again. I actually saw him in a supermarket like 10 years later. He's just a normal guy, But a lot of people process things differently. But what we have to remember here, Fillmore, with Rudrani Devi is, why was she in India in the first place?
Well, is it even explained? I mean, I have
It
to have
is.
to read.
She was
I guess.
visiting. She was on some kind of a spiritual retreat meeting with a guru.
Okay.
So that's why she was there. So this is something that has always been with her, and we'll hear her speak about the so-called gift that she was told she had at a young
Right.
age. So that's something that was always there. So I think, and I don't want to do her down and say, it's full of shit or whatever, but I think it's more about Shuli here. But I think people who get into cults, this is only my observation now, I'm no expert, right? But I think you're either born into it, which happens a lot of times.
Lots of times.
But also a lot of people between a certain age of about 15 to 22, 23, you're at your most open-minded. That's why it's the age of conscription for the army for a very good reason. And it's when most people fall into cults. And it's nothing to do with intelligence, I don't believe. I think it purely has to do with people. It's almost a positive trait in somebody because you're trying to see beyond what's visible to you, and you think there's more there that you need to tap into. And that's why cults are insidious, because they take advantage of people's curiosity and good nature in an attempt to either extract money, control, power, or whatever out of them.
Well, that's it. That's why I never had a problem with, let's say, the donation box at a church, because ultimately you're not forced to give anything, and
Exactly,
and it does offer something to somebody, even if you don't necessarily believe in that faith. Whereas with cults, the idea, like Leah Remini did that whole Escaping Scientology show, and then she wrote books about it. And that one of the most fascinating interviews I ever saw was the one with David Koresh's dad, who escaped.
Oh, I've never seen that.
He was incredible to listen to him, because he was a musician and he made music for the church as well. And he was so forthright and so engaging. I'm like, I have a hard time believing this guy could believe that stuff even for a minute, based on how lucid he was and how clear-minded he was. But again, maybe that's something you only get when you break away.
Yeah, it may be so. Actually, incidentally, do you remember that show, the Scientology show with Leah Remini? Remember the guy who did that with her? He had a South African accent, Mike Rinder. He actually passed away a few weeks ago.
Oh wow!
He was brilliant. He escaped Scientology. He was right at the top. He was Miscavige's like one of his closest, associates. Yeah, and he got out, and after a couple of years, it took him a couple of years to fully extract himself mentally from it. Oh, and he spent the rest of his life trying to campaigning against it and trying to get the word out. So rest in peace.
I think that says more about it as well. The fact that people are viciously against it once they get out, as opposed to saying, yeah, I tried it, it wasn't for me.
Yeah, a lot of people are paid off not to speak. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So,
yeah.
So I love your parents. That's amazing.
It's a lot easier to follow than to lead, right? So, so then fast forward to, 40 years later, here we are in New York. We had been living in my wife, my two girls, 11 and 6. Those aren't their ages. Those are their names. We're weird. We're weird hippies over here. But no.
Fuck. I need a cricket sound effect. I gotta come up with.
That was hey, I'm after flying in from Dallas. Boy, are my arms tired.
Perfect.
Yeah, they it's the 4 of us. At that time, it was 3 cats, 4 people, 1 dog.
This is when I heard this, I said, "You fucking idiot! You're living in New York City. There's 2 of you. You're only working essentially part-time for slave wages, and not as a comic, as a news reporter for the Stern Show. Yeah. Basically, you're working. You got a little red book with you, and you've got a wife, 2 kids, 3 pets in New York City, and you're not owning a fucking brownstone or anything. You don't have anything. You're renting the entire time. How long would it take for you to figure out that you're not making it?
I know. Yeah, well, the penny
And
did eventually drop, but he had
and
to be
what-
forced. I mean, he was like, what's the word for? Is it what's called positive dismissal or what? Constructive dismissal, I think it's called, where you essentially fire someone, but without doing it, you kind of reduce their salary to a point where it's non. They can't live on it and they have to resign. It's something. I think that's what they did with Shuli.
Well, did you ever hear Jay Thomas talk about when they tried to basically push him off Mork and Mindy by lowering his salary? And
No.
he said, I was getting 10,000 a week, and I was like an expensive day player. I had like almost 2 lines in every episode, so it was great. I'd go down. I didn't have an agent. I just cashed the check. All the other extras would be passing their per diems, whatever. And I had 10,000 going straight in my pocket. And then he said, well, what happens? They don't fire you in Hollywood. What they do is they lower your salary. And so what happens is you quit. You get incensed. How dare you? So my booking agent called me and he said, well, they're only going to offer you 9,000. He goes, let's see, 9,000, 10 episodes. It's 90,000. Yeah, sounds great. And they go, he goes, he'd show up in the set and they go, what happened? We lowered his salary and he's staying? What is that?
Yeah.
He goes, There he goes, are you sure you don't want to call a mediator? He goes, no, I think this mediation's going fantastic. And then he said they got rid of him the following, and with 3 other people, they hired Jonathan Winters. But you're right. There's that way where Shuli left the show. He wasn't given the choice, really. They basically said, we're not going to bother paying you much more anymore. In fact, we're going to have your salary, or we'll give you a buyout, whatever. But you're not worth it to us. But he had to know that was coming a long time earlier. I mean, maybe you don't know what other people make, but you know what you're making.
I just think, like, who was it, the comedian Chris Rock said, as humans, underneath it all, we're only as faithful as our options. And if we don't have any other options, we're fiercely loyal, but only out of in a selfish way. And I think that's what Shuli found him. So he didn't have anything else to do. Anything that he did outside of the Howard Stern show was directly linked to the show itself. So whether it be Jay Thomas, Miserable Men, he wasn't doing sets in the Comedy Store or the Cellar or whatever,
No. He was trying to prop up Beetlejuice, hoping for some residual shekels to fall out of his drunken hands so he could get home, so he could pay the rent. But I mean, 3 pets in addition to kids in New York City?
Insane.
That's just stupid. That's just incredibly stupid, no matter what you feel about pets. Practicality. Fucking hell.
A 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in Astoria, Queens, which for the 10 years that we lived in that apartment, beautiful neighborhood, great area. But once the pandemic hit, everything changed. All bets were off. The neighborhood changed. It just became a place that wasn't safe for my family. So we'd always wanted to move, but the East Coast is an expensive spot. If I had this job that I had for 15 years, any other place than New York or LA, we'd be great. We'd be living like kings. Right. So there, we're just getting by. So our options are not, we don't have a lot of options. We can't move to Westchester or Long Island or New Jersey. You're just moving from one crappy situation to another, right? So,
okay.
But again, why fucking stay? I don't get it. Like, why would you, especially when he knew his on-air time was dying, a slow death after Marcy, like 2013. We did that episode, Oh Captain, My Cap, Fuck Off Captain, with the fella that left to go do that what was it? Green, like farming, I don't know, whatever the fuck he was, cycling around the world. I can't remember his name, but a sussy. He said, I saw the writing on the wall. They let everybody freak out that they might not get renewed. And I didn't want that to happen again. I said, I'm making a ladder. I'm going to move out of here. It might be fall on my ass, but I'm going to do it. So it's based out of fear, mostly, some of these people.
There's something that, obviously I don't live in America and my knowledge of American geography wouldn't be great as a consequence. Now, I just think to myself, though, I know where Alabama is. I know how far away it is. And I know how different it is to New York. And I'm thinking to myself, if he lived in New York and he didn't like the neighborhood, surely to God, there had to be an area that wasn't in two different time zones away, that wasn't a burning mess, like he's saying. Like I don't know, like Allentown or somewhere that's like a 2-hour drive, or somewhere that he wouldn't have to have such an upheaval in his life. Pottsville, even where he where he performed, somewhere that's it's like where you can commute to Manhattan if you have to after the pandemic. You can afford a house on your income, and you don't have to move. You don't have to make this drastic move. So immediately I'm thinking there's something, like, to frame it that I decided on Alabama myself because I've thought that was the best decision. I don't buy that. It doesn't ring true.
No, of course he had no options. Like, where can I go with the money we have? What can we do with it? How long will it last me? He stumbled across the Stuttering John, the Uncle Rico shit, like what, a year and a bit into the show? A year, perhaps 8 months?
I know, but the point I'm making, Fillmore, is like, for the money that they had, they didn't have to go to Alabama to pay the same amount to get something similar, surely.
Maybe they did. That's what I'm saying. Maybe they were so skint, because if they were only renting, that's money that's gone. That's not even, there's no equity there to get back because you're not selling anything. You're just up and leaving, and probably left a good chunk of furniture behind that they couldn't afford to take with them. Who knows?
So maybe people can correct me on this in the comments. So there's nowhere within a 2 to 3 hour commute of New York that would be in any way similar to what he has, in terms of, even if you had to get a slightly smaller house than he has in Alabama, because he probably has a big house there.
I don't know. Upper New York State, like Utica, Syracuse, I have no idea, but that's a hell of a long commute for very little payoff. 3 hours. Imagine 3 hours going back and forth.
Yeah, but if you're only doing it, I suppose.
I mean, if it's 3 days a week and you have to be on the premise, I guess you just put up with it. But that's 18 hours extra a week commute. No one's going to do that.
But like, does Gary lives up in like near New Haven or something, doesn't he?
It was Maine.
Did anyway.
It was Maine. I think was it Maine? Yeah, I think so. Oh. But then when they sold the McMansion, I don't know where they moved to. Maybe they stayed in the same state, but I have a feeling it was Florida.
Gary, I think he lived in Connecticut, though. I think he just lived like an hour and a half, like a half hour, an hour and a half or something.
You're right. I seem to recall he was looking at Maine, but then I heard from some people saying that they said Maine is almost about as expensive, so it's not like he's saving a massive amount by unloading it. So he'd be doing better to go to Illinois or anywhere, the Bible Belt maybe, to offset that, to make it worthwhile. But and we don't even know how much equity he had in his house before he sold it. I don't imagine it was that much.
If we're going to move, I want it to be a move. I want it to be our first house. I want it to feel like something new. So we started looking online, different states, because, hey, we're working from home. And I checked with work. I said, does it matter where home is? And they said, no. I said, great. Let's start. Because I had two feelings. One, this was going to go on for a little while. And two, my boss, who was already germ-phobic before a pandemic broke out, is most likely not going to return to the office, to the studio. That I understood as well. I mean, look, it was a bit of a risk, but I like playing poker. And in poker, the saying is, it doesn't matter what two cards you have in your hand. What matters is knowing the player across from you.
I love this analogy. Like this is a rounder situation. Pay that man his money. Yeah. Come on. Fuck off, Shuli. You were given no options. That's what he's not admitting here. Yeah. We had no choice. We had to pack up shop and get to some cheap fuck state.
Yeah. But obviously there's a lot of revisionism going in here,
No kidding.
And Shuli is kind of playing this, well, I like to play a bit of 4D chess. You know what I mean? like he's making out that this was all high stakes, but a gamble, but based on a calculated risk that he had his intuition. Bullshit. No, not for a minute.
Being able to read that person, and that's a big thing for me in life. Is like I don't need to have agents and managers and all that shit.
They wouldn't have you, dude. You don't make enough money to afford either of them, shithead. I wouldn't have them. That's like we said that before. Trying to get into Harvard. Sorry, you're not accepted. Fuck Harvard. I wouldn't go there if you paid me. Suddenly. Putana gamutina Yesu malaka.
He
Fuck
thinks
him.
he's Jay Leno. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I just live off my stand-up. If Shuli lived off his stand-up, he'd be that black guy in Roadhouse that Patrick Swayze throws the keys to his car and he says, "Here." He was in Weird Science. That guy had the best voice ever. Yeah. In the family, Jules.
It doesn't matter what cards I have in my hand. What matters is reading that person and being able to do what I need to do to get that person to notice me or get me into that world, let's say. So, so we found online, homes out here that were literally the same amount of money we were paying every month for rent. And I mean, beautiful giant homes, acres of land,
Right.
For the same price as a 2-bedroom apartment. And
you can own it.
And you can own
What a
it.
concept. You
Which
don't have
we've
to
never,
rent.
yeah. We've got 2 kids, 15 years, and we don't own a home yet. And that's a big thing. I wanted to own a home. I want one. And then it came to like, well, okay, we found a place that we really like, but we don't know anything about the South. We don't know anything about Alabama other than our general assumptions, right? Which is, everybody's toothless and banging everybody. You know what I mean? And so we said, look, we're stuck in this 2-bedroom apartment every day, every night. We sit in a car for 14 hours. We're in a new state. We can check it out. We can see new places and see what the hell's going on. And that's what we did. We rolled out there.
You knew nobody.
Well, I knew a couple people out here, 2 guys, and I known them for a while. They were good friends of mine. And one of them, ironically, was telling me for years to just buy property out here.
I was thinking Bigfoot, maybe. You want to move next to me? It is.
I think he was from Vermont, wasn't he, Bigfoot?
I think you're right, and it makes perfect sense. Vermont. Jeez, how did I forget that? Fuck, my geography skills are piss poor when it comes to the States. That's for certain.
Because he's in the mortgage business, and he's like, he says, this is going to be another Austin. This is going to be another Nashville. You should just buy something out here.
Right.
And at that time, we didn't have money to invest in property. So it was like, yeah, okay, dude. Nice. Yeah.
One of the big hotspots was for film. Actually, it became Georgia. The Marvel Studios stuff was they filmed. They had made whole new studios down there in Georgia to take advantage of the tax breaks or whatever the fuck it was, and huge, massive sound stages, and apparently very quite lucrative, and lots of productions use the same facilities, and it's as opposed to filming in LA, which got to cost through the roof, in New York, same thing.
I think it's great. America's so vast and big that obviously every state runs like its own republic almost, and depending on how they're run, they can attract commerce and all sorts of things. I suppose the downside of that is if they're not run very well, they can end up like, you get places like Detroit, and you can get that kind of disparity there. But like the South is like, you have Texas now, all the tech companies have gone there. And
yes.
It's totally changed in the last 10 years anyway.
Oh, the workforce landscape. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fuck. I know you think of Detroit like the car belt, right? And it's beautifully destroyed, Michigan, the way you see some of those old city hall and the old fixtures and old theaters and cathedrals. Someone made a great point to take pictures of all these things with natural light going in, and you see these ballrooms and stuff that are completely abandoned. And I love that urban decay. It really looks fascinating. But it also is incredibly sad when you think of what a boom town that was at one point, Detroit.
Sure. But even
Motown, fuck.
Yeah. But even Michigan, like in Flint, when you hear about how that guy managed the water supply and basically gave the clean water supply to the commercial companies and gave the poisonous supply to the. I mean, it was really outrageous. But that's why we need kind of checks and balances in all of life, so people like this don't get their mitts on things.
No kidding.
Thanks. Now we come out here and the people are the complete opposite of everything around us for the last 15 years.
Right.
The area is completely different. No one's in a rush. That speed, that gear that you're in when you're in New York, you're not in that gear anywhere else. I don't know, maybe Tokyo or something, but like it's nonstop. For me, I was working 5 days a week, and then 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weekends out of the month, I'd be on the road doing stand-up.
Oh wow.
So like I'm clocking in with these people called my family for hours at a week. That's it. I got nothing invested in them. They got nothing invested in me. I come back from flying and driving and staying in crappy hotels. You know, I come home, I'm miserable on a Sunday at 6 o'clock, and all they are is just happy to see me.
Sounds like a full life. Jesus Christ. Well, pardon me, guys. So again, the rat race, what he was doing was treading water backwards, basically, on the Stern Show. And I think part of what it was if Levy was over on the East Coast and other people that he knew and comics that he was familiar with, because it is scary. Once you're going to move somewhere up 100% and you're going to up and leave, it's always scary because you don't know if it's going to work. No one knows. Yeah. And you hope for the best, but also you're giving up what you know. And even I'm thinking of, when I have to move from Asia to go somewhere else, I don't know like what it's going to be like, but I'm going to be all kind of nervy. But at the same time, once you make the decision, it's the right decision. You just have to settle yourself to it. For him, like seeing what was lying in store for him at the Stern Show, seeing which way it went after Marcy Turk, why did it take another 9 years and a pandemic to figure it out?
Because you know other options, but I do. You can see where he's coming from here, because there's a kind of everything is codependent, because he can't. He has to work, right? He wants to be a comic. He can't get gigs booked on the weekend to supplement his poor income from the show without the show, because he has the name recognition, right? So the two things work together, and like ultimately. He hasn't got a pot to piss in, and I know what he means. Like cities do have their own energy and speed, and and it's not for everyone.
No, it isn't. Bigger cities, smaller cities. It depends where you are in your life. But he had 2 kids, and the idea he's going to put it forward. I had to do what's best for my kids, like you did during Hurricane Sandy, asshole. Like this is the guy who's telling you now I had to leave for the sake of my family. He couldn't give a flying fuck. I mean, I think he did ultimately make a decision thinking of his family in the end, but not 10 years earlier.
Well, Shuli talks on this. He talked a few minutes ago about he has this intuition about this poker player intuition. Well, he fucking forgot it that day, didn't he, on Hurricane Sandy, because he really overplayed his hand that day and got absolutely taken to the cleaners. Permanently. I mean, he never really recovered that from that. But with the audience, and I think with Gary and some of his co-workers, I think they saw a side to him that they maybe suspected, but it was confirmed. And
yeah, I mean,
cast.
He was so totally pantsed because now all of a sudden no one can trust him. And he's not funny. And so what's the payoff? You could take a lot of abuse if someone's really successful. Really, you're going to get some residual money from him being a satellite around him. But Shuli wasn't that person. He wasn't the Artie chair. The Artie chair alone would have been funnier without Shuli.
Yeah, he was playing with the house's money. Yeah. And, he didn't win. And he was banking on it going down well, and Howard saying, the new Jackie!
Yeah, right.
The new Artie.
Artie, if he was, taking between bone marrow transplants. Jesus Christ. Well, like Shuli's never looked like the picture of health. And on the Stern Show, of course, that never changed. The Shulagy album, that the drunk show, the sober show, the graphics for that are so embarrassingly bad. One day, if we do ever get to that, it'll be our white album or Sandinista.
And I'm just like already thinking about tomorrow. That was New York.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like coming out here, people say you pump the brakes in life. This is like pulling the handbrake in life, coming out here from where we were. This was coming to a dead stop pretty much. And that idea excited me. That idea of having peace of mind of where I live I haven't had that. I don't know, ever really.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so we found a place. We bought a place, and I mean, the houses were going like candy over here. You could not.
Sure.
It was like you saw a thing on the market 2 hours later, bought. You're like, holy.
Yeah,
crap.
I mean, I get people knocking on my door offering me 20,000 above.
Yeah.
Cash deal.
Yeah, we're getting those same offers, and we haven't been here a year yet.
That was my next question. When did you actually make the move, and then what changed in your world?
So September, we moved up here. I mean, we bought the place, and we moved up here in September as a family. You know,
In 2020.
In 2020, yeah. So this September will be a year, our
Okay.
first year anniversary. Now, I'll never forget, we all walked into the house because I came out here. I was the one that came out here to actually see the house. First of all, we saw it virtually.
Uh-huh.
And I said to my wife, look, one of us has got to go out there to check this place out.
Better for me to get away from the fucking kids in the city. So why don't I do it? Not a thought to himself, like maybe the wife should really be the one to see if she loves the house, and she's going to be spending the most time in it, most likely.
Yeah, it's a long day. Like that's what
He said 14 hours drive.
drive. So that's got to be like an hour or two. I mean, I once flew from New York to Nashville, and it took about 2 hours, I think, or an hour and a half. It's probably around the same, but a bit longer, a bit shorter actually.
Yeah, just about. And so he's going to go into this whole like spiel. I love this one, actually. Hold on.
Physically with our own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you can't go. You hold this whole family together. If you catch this shit and die, the girls are going to look like they're living in a circus every day. I'm not going to be able to dress them. Their hair's going to be a mess. I go, if I drive.
Father of the Year.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus
Wow.
Christ Almighty. This is, he's more like his idol Stern than I ever
Yeah,
imagined.
I was just gonna say.
What do I do? When I heard Robin going after Stern saying you couldn't be alone with your kids, you had to have a nanny at all times, I was shocked.
Yeah, it's shocking, but it's not
surprising.
Yeah, it's so plausible. You can totally imagine it.
Well, I just thought, like before you were big and before you could afford hired help, weren't you helping your wife with the kid? And like, of course, you read all the literature and you hear him on the radio. Of course he didn't. He was totally one of those guys thinking, well, Ben Stern didn't bother taking care of us because he was actually working. You were sleeping in your back office, napping, meditating / napping, and fucking around with Ralph downstairs in the panic room. Christ.
Drop dead. You got my life insurance. You got a shot. Let me fly out. Let me do
killing
this.
me here. I've got a fucking shot.
So you got to know your limitations in life, people. You got to know what's up.
True that.
So
I'm with you, brother.
yeah. So I fly out. I check out the place. It's fantastic. I call her. I'm like, I think we should do it. And we got the process going, and we got the place. And so in September, we move out here, all of us, the kids, the cats, the dog. And I'll never forget, we walked in, and we all go. They go upstairs to see their rooms now, because my girls have their own rooms now. They've been in bunk beds for years together in the same room. And then we all just laid down on the carpet at the top of the steps, kind of like in a circle. All our heads were in the middle, and we all just were looking up.
Like Jonestown. Fucking hell. Okay, so we're going to get to
the
it, guys.
sky, and I was just like,
Okay, this is a Lifetime movie now, you guys.
I was just like, this is insane that we're here. Like, I can't believe we did this in the craziest time to do it. Right. And then I started setting up all my stuff. And then I realized I have peace of mind here. I have what I was looking for. And then we went back to work that Monday, live on the air. And of course, my move was, the talk of the town.
Now this is where, of course, he's not wrong in the sense of we did cover it. It was from when we started QF the first year, and we played the clips, and we both, like, it was Sam and I at the time, I think, or it was me and Raven. We both felt like we felt bad for Shuli because Jimmy Kimmel was on the air and Stern and Robin the three of them were all like, oh, so you're going to do comedy in Alabama? Like, what the hell are you doing there? And it was really a bunch of millionaires shitting on the peon.
It was.
And that's where he actually did deserve a little sympathy there. And I fully admitted it then, even though I couldn't stand him. But I'm like, why, what the fuck do you two, like the three of you have no problems.
Yeah, like what he's saying here isn't unreasonable or delusional at all. I mean, that's coming. But I agree with I think Jimmy Kimmel was on and kind of was trying to make fun of him and trying to mind the whole thing for jokes. Whereas it was quite, I think Shuli, but he was probably quite scared at the time because it was all unknown. But also, look, when you have, I'm sure anyone who has kids will agree, when you have kids, it just does change subconsciously how your entire mind works. Oh, and you do have this extra level of fear and this knowing responsibility. Howard doesn't have that because he's kind of demented, but most people do. And in that context, you have to have sympathy for Shuli here.
Yep.
This Jew.
You didn't know. You had no idea you had that kind of power, right?
Yeah.
And everybody knows about it.
I thought this might be a little interesting. I didn't know we were kicking off the show with it, but yeah, Howard, was just like, you're not going to believe this, Robin. He's like, in the middle of the night, he ups and moves like we're gypsies. He runs his family over to Alabama and so I jump on and right away I'm very defensive because, and I'm a comic. I usually don't get like this unless somebody's heckling or interrupting my show when I'm working.
In case you didn't get it, guys, for the upteenth time, he is a comic. I just wanted to promote that one more time.
But I was very defensive about it because I was just like, A, you don't know anything about this place, just like I didn't know anything about this place. And B, like, I didn't move up here to better my career. I moved up here to give my kids a chance to be kids. Like, I can't let my kid ride a bike in Queens. Go learn how to, where am I going to teach her? I walked out of my apartment and, this was during the pandemic, homeless guy taking a shit behind my car on the street.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. And he wasn't wearing a mask. Can you believe that?
Oh, Christ. Oh, and he picked.
Why don't you make a podcast about him, Shuli?
Transient turds. Well, the thing is, so here he is again. This is where he loses me. This whole, we talked about it already. The whole, I did it for the kids. You didn't do it for the kids. Be upfront. We had no options. Was it a bonus that when we moved there, my kids had all their own rooms and this wide space and a lot more like outdoor time? Yes, but be upfront about that. Don't lie and couch it in some noble cause. You'd sell one of your kids for fucking rolling papers, asshole. Like, what do you like? He's not a martyr here. No, and what he says about the bike is true, and I'm sure he believes that, but it wasn't the deciding factor. No, none of these things were the deciding factors. They're way down the list, I would say. Oh, big time. Look, money is everything in life, and be it the abundance or lack of, that's what will drive decisions. Yeah, not anything else. No, God, no.
Kind of crazy, just like a dog. Well, it's like your parents kind of did the same thing, didn't they?
Well, right. So now here I am, rolling the dice, moving to a place, but at least I know the language. At least I have a little bit more resources. I'm not coming in as cold as they did, but it was still about them. It was about what you do for your family in the time where you need to do it. What's that? Right.
They caught flack as well when they just up and decided to leave Israel.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, there were family that didn't talk to them, that were like, you think you're better than us. Like you're not going to, because in Israel serving, it's mandatory. Everybody who lives there serves in the military. I think men for 4 years, women for 2. But I mean, everybody. Israel, listen, and God bless them for it. There's no citizen that gets turned down. They have special divisions of the military for autistic people that they help them with decoding and math. Like
That should have been another Shuli show. Autistic Israeli troops.
Why not?
Road
Why not?
stories. Like, I mean, he eventually is going to start plugging all these shows that went by the wayside and now no longer exist on the show. But it's funny how he goes into it in the way of, we're going to do this, and I've got plans to do this, and every single thing you did on the Stern Show, but you're going to change the name. That's the level of intelligence. That's the level of intuitive thinking or free thinking and creativity that you've got going on, dude.
Well, it's that, and it's also the desperation. It's also I'm going to try to steal some of the audience. I'm going to try to not steal, exclusively, but I'm going to try to make it as easy for Stern listeners to transition to my exciting network or platform. I don't think he had the network at this stage. It was just the Shuli show.
It was just the Shuli show, and he had everything on YouTube and ostensibly on he had some Patreon shows, but no one was. It was about as successful as the fucking Radio Gunk Patreon.
I just want to say, sorry, Fillmore. I just want to say to anyone out there, if you want to start a network, a radio or a video network, I'll tell you how to do it. So you go to youtube.com. and you go to create an account, okay? And then you type in the name of your network and you put in your username and password, and there you go. You have a network. That's how it's done.
I love the fact that he kept saying that was the joke. As it, that's like the same as saying I'm a comic. This is a network.
Yeah, that's the joke. Yeah, that's the joke.
This is a comedy album.
Yeah.
Beth is a model. Howard loves pussy. I mean, these are all truisms, guys.
Israel's like a hunter that uses every part of the animal, right? That's the way I look at it. Like, there's no piece that goes to waste in Israel. They're geniuses. But, that being said, you guys are annoying too, and you know that. So cut the shit.
Just wanted, because we had that little conversation before we started recording where you basically said, my parents chose for their kids.
That's right. That's right. And I didn't realize that till later of like, why did they come here? Like what? And then you hear the story and you're like, oh, okay. They had no dog in this fight. They came out here just for us. And that was huge. And so being able to do that, and then I get on the air and Howard starts busting my balls. And instead of just kind of laughing about it and rolling with it, I planted my flag in the ground, and I'm like, fuck that, man. Like, you're not gonna bully me. I've never, and not that he was like, stuffing me in a locker bully, but like, to me, it felt like I did something for the benefit of my family.
Oh, fuck.
And as a parent, as a father, or just as a human being, you can be like, all right, well, he made this move for his kids. I can't really fuck with him about that. Like,
No, I hired retards to do a podcast for the good of my family.
Yeah, isn't it amazing though? It's the selective moral, ground, I suppose. Yeah, the moral ground, I suppose, where Shuli says, well, why can't you just be nice? The same guy who we covered recently outed Riley Martin as his legal troubles for the sake of not even a laugh. This is a guy, Shuli, who would routinely ring up a disabled woman, what's her name? Underdog, with autism. Yeah, Underdog, and totally manipulate her and humiliate her on the air. But then when it comes to this, no. Let's the show that I'm on doesn't do anything like that. It's a respectable show, so let's treat me with the respect I deserve. Doesn't really work that way. Just doesn't. When has the Stern Show ever done that? Ever?
Zero times.
Never.
There's people that lift vehicles off their kids, in a moment of helping them. So
the adrenaline pump gets going.
That's right.
It's Kal-El in the movie Superman.
Yeah, that's a great
it's a little
scene.
kid.
But with Glenn Ford. I tell you what, though. Shuli had a choice here. He could have got he decided to go down, take the high road, and say, I did this for my kids. What he could have done, but he couldn't because he was working on the show, was, you want to know the truth, Stern? I'm on the fucking balls of my ass because you won't pay me. I can't afford to live there. That's why
brave.
I'm out here.
That's bravery.
Because you don't look after your staff. That's what and that's ultimately the truth of it. And but it will not serve Shuli well, especially not at this time, because he doesn't want to burn any bridges here. So he's just going to take the high road here and say, I did it for my kids, and take the hit on it.
Well, the thing was, and the reason why people didn't stick with him after the initial episode was because, and I knew this would happen, and the trail off was drastic. I mean, it went from like 18,000 views for the first episode to like 1 or 1,700 for the next to nothing. He was like routinely 500, and he had certain comics on. He had Sparks. He had a few other people on. This is before his producer got done in for child porn, and he had to take all these videos down. But someone has supposedly ripped all of the videos beforehand, which doesn't surprise me. Just about everything is preserved online somewhere. But I mean, the idea that you were going to try to make a go of it. Again, it was desperation, and I think he would get more support if he would just be honest about it and say, I tried everything, and I tried anything. I couldn't get anything going, and I was desperate, and I did what I latched onto the Who Are These Podcasts thing. I don't even know if Who Are These Podcasts do any more Stuttering John stuff. I think that well's run completely dry.
Oh, I'm happy to say that I've no clue. Long since divorced from that scene. It's just it's too grim for me.
It really is. It's only getting worse as far as I know, and people that are still stuck in there. It's like you got to get out of the lockers, guys. It really is not a good place to be.
No,
you're protecting your own. Sure.
And then and then other guests would come on, and one day it was him. It was Howard, Robin, and Jimmy Kimmel all busting my balls for coming to Alabama. And I'm just like, look at me. I got 3 billionaires goofing on me about what an idiot I am. I'm like, it's pretty cool at the end of the day. But yeah, I fought back.
He fought back. He didn't fight back. I remember the audio. All he did was say, well, I got to do it for my kids. You're right. He had the opportunity there to tell them exactly what he felt.
No, he fought back. He got angry is what he did. But he didn't necessarily fight. He just got frustrated, and he was, and I understand it. Like they hit a nerve with him, and he was. I mean, we have to take him at face value here that the reasons why he moved out there were, like he says, and not for any other reasons. But maybe they weren't, and maybe that was what was, kind of annoying him. But that audio is terrible. I remember you did play it. It is terrible because it's Howard just showing off his this side of him that's just a bit, he's mean spirited, and he likes punching down, which
absolutely
Shuli is no stranger to doing that either. But
one sec, let me just see what I got here. Yeah, okay, I'm just going to go through see which ones they are. Shuli paying his dues in Alabama now. Okay, got a couple of these. Let me just, because some of these are short clips. Let me just play a couple of them, just to refresh people here. First one, 908.
What if the show goes back to working in Manhattan? I'm assuming at some point we will go back. What will you do then? Will you come back to New York, or will you just abandon the show?
Well, when I talked to management about this ahead of time, I didn't just pick up and leave without letting anybody know. I worked this out ahead of time. I was told that while we are on a work from home basis, that it doesn't matter where your home is as long as you're able to work.
Agreed.
And my issue was my family didn't feel safe. My 10-year-old daughter didn't feel safe. My wife didn't feel safe. And I made a decision based on my family. I put my family first, and I wanted them to feel safe. And so I came out here. Well, I didn't know shit. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know shit about Alabama. And I came out here because I got to a point where I said, if we're gonna pursue this, I got to go out there and see this community and see what the hell it's like, because much like you, and I'm sure most of the staff, you hear Alabama and you assume, rednecks and shit. Let me ask you a question, Howard. Let me ask you a question. Let's say there's a vaccine in October, November. When do you come back into that building?
Well, again, you're asking a question that is difficult to answer.
Because if he had his druthers, he'd never come back, and he never did.
Yeah, he has to couch this carefully. Management are listening, Howard.
Yep.
It's the same question you're asking me.
If the vaccine, no. What I'm saying is, if I have to go back into the building, I'm not in Alabama. I don't live. Yeah. I'm a bit closer than you are.
That's fine. And listen, and if we get to that point, to that point where we're all coming back to that building, then we'll figure something out. We'll figure something out. But you and I both know nobody knows what the fuck they're doing with this thing. Nobody knows how to fucking contain this.
Why are you so angry? Why are you yelling? Why are you getting worked up?
Because I think it's silly that
I'm just asking how you
somebody's. I was explaining to you,
Shuli. You sound defensive for a guy who I'm saying, Shuli, how did you come to Alabama? Right. You know, this is mind-blowing because if we do go back,
right,
you would be very far away. I think the commute would take you 3 days by car.
So what's not really being said, first, Jesus Christ, Howard with a subtle knowledge of driving, the guy who cried in Manhattan when he got lost. So the idea is, if you've got like this guy, here's his opportunity to say, look, money matters is the reason why we didn't fucking stay and why we aren't going to. But surely on some hand, somebody must have told him, look, he's not fucking coming back. And I know him. He is going to want to stay home. But the fact that they had to cut his salary, I don't understand I guess it was just no different than what Radcliffe is doing over at Manchester United, just axing non-essential personnel. And at this point, Stern's getting to the point where he's no longer a premium channel, so maybe those dollars really aren't there for those extra people.
Yeah, it's again, there is kind of similarities between Sirius and Manchester United, both being two incredibly dysfunctional and washed up organizations. But I think with both, what you see is a kind of a penny wise and pound foolish approach, where you are at one hand you are spending ridiculous amounts of money for this Cooper woman who has a podcast that's available in other platforms and paying tens of millions for it, and at the same time paying or letting go people who are probably on minimum wage anyway, thinking that's going to make a big difference. Like what we found out yesterday with Manchester United, if firing Ten Hag and Dan Ashworth, the football team, who was only in the job for 3 months, cost them 17 million. And that's not including even the contract and the 200 million they gave Ten Hag only a few months previous to buy players who they're now trying to get rid of and paying high salaries. Like it's really, it's incredible stuff. And just Sirius are a bit like that as well. These types of institutions can only be propped up for so long before a radical change is required. And I don't think Radcliffe is the change they need, because they're still hemorrhaging money.
Well, the other common thing, the thing they have in common is Howard's fascinated with ladyboys, and Manchester United play like ladyboys on the field.
That's a good point.
So the next clip here is called "Wiggy and 34 Bust Shuli Balls About Having a Second Family."
Okay, all right.
There's no place safer that's close to New York.
Where are you, Robin? Where are you that you're so safe?
She's in Jersey. She's about 20 minutes outside of Manhattan.
We looked for places in Jersey. It didn't work
Jersey,
out there.
I understand. Like, Gary, aren't you moving to Maine or something?
I mean, listen, if you said we're never coming back, I'd move to Maine tomorrow.
Yeah, by the way,
no, I'm not.
I don't have any. Let me give you an answer, first of all. Everyone looks to me to have an answer about if we're ever coming back. How the fuck do I know? I'm sitting in my basement.
Right.
Well, and that's why I wouldn't make the move. And I want to point something out to Shuli. When you said, Howard, are you coming back? Howard may never come back, but that doesn't mean we're not going back. There may be a scenario where Howard stays where he is and we as a group go back to the office.
Well, that's true.
It's just something that.
What a horrible lack of contingency. And the fact is, like, you guys, you're staying on the air. You claim it's because, well, what are these guys going to do? What's JD going to do if I retire? Well, he'll continue to starve as he is right now.
Yeah, like Fillmore, in any other field of business, right? Howard would be one of the worst managers ever seen at a company.
Yes,
because he will, at one hand, insist that he is the boss and make sure that every decision goes through him. But on the other hand, he will be the first to deflect responsibility and passive aggressively move it on to someone else if it involves a decision that's difficult for him to take. And I think when you throw into this also the fact that the vaccine, they're talking about the vaccine now like it was D-Day in World War II, as in the day the vaccine comes out is the day it all ends, right. Which didn't go like that. The vaccine was merely attenuated the worst effects of it, but we're all still going to get it. Some people are still going to get it really bad and end up, in bed for a week. I think if Howard had known that back then, he would have just said, "I'm never leaving this house again."
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's how bad he was. That's how sick he was in the head.
I think so, yeah. And then Bowie, so there you had Bowie also saying, look, like I've already got a plan to move in the event you say we're not going back, we're staying remote. And if we are, like, imagine having to push that off just because you don't know if your asshole boss has the sack to ante up and say, this is what's going to happen.
No leadership at all. No backbone, no bollocks. He's a piece of shit, this guy. And if you work in a company and you have an asshole like this, who is a complete narcissist and who is just emotionally sending all his staff on a roller coaster for all sorts of different reasons, being contract negotiations, everything, get the hell out of there. Get away, get as far away as you can. Yep,
that guy Sussy was the smartest one. Him and the other guy, God, what was his name? Howard sued him for the Are You Hot? God,
the Howard TV guy, was it?
Yeah. God, it's gonna. He's a guy that I can't remember his name, but he hung out with Howard because he got single, and then when that lawsuit stuff happened, all of a sudden he was dead to Howard, absolutely dead. And I remember talking to Richie about it, and he said no one knows how to get a hold of him. He completely went under the radar, and I would love to have had an interview with him to ask him what it was like before and after and during and hanging out with Howard. He wouldn't say anything, I'm certain. But
I mean, Howard's a powerful guy. You have to, like, regardless of what you think of him, the facts are the facts, and money, and money is power. Yeah. And, if he's very vindictive too, don't underestimate it's someone with a number of very well-defined personality disorders that Howard has. Oh, yeah. Don't underestimate their what they're capable of doing. He could really go after people and end people's careers, no doubt.
I remember that clip because they took pieces of it and played it on, I don't know, one of those 30-minute TV shows where they're getting everybody up to date. It might have been, da 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 da. I don't remember exactly. Don't quote me, which is why I didn't say the name.
Right.
But I just remember seeing it, and I was going, "Oh, that's the guy that led the Whack Pack or whatever it was show." And then I meet you all these years, later, or not years, year, a year later.
Yeah, it's wild because, work for me at that time. I love Howard. I thank him for the opportunity. We wouldn't be sitting here talking right now. I wouldn't be doing a podcast if it wasn't for him with as many listeners as I have. So I'm
both of them. Fucking hell, Jesus Christ! Like that's another one I thought, what a great zinger. He doesn't even realize it, but like, again, he was struggling for the longest time. It was really, really. I was shocked. I mean, you and I, we knew what the Stern Show was in 2020 and 2018 and 17 and 15 and the limited appeal he had, but you'd think on some level there'd be some runoff of leftovers going. Let's see what he said. Like, let's just tune into him because for the off chance he says something out of turn suddenly, and then we'll get a revelation.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible because when you think of how easy it is in 2020 to access this stuff, all you have to do is open up an app that everyone has on their phone, YouTube, and type Shuli in, and you're in, and it's free. Right. Like, it's not like it would have been in the 90s where someone went and became a sidekick in another market somewhere, and it's the access so easy now. But it's interesting. I think, like, I remember around this time, during COVID, during the real dark time of COVID, and not being able to sleep one night. I went through a terrible time with lack of sleep because we had a newborn in the house, and I was stressed out about work. It was terrible, and I remember saying, I'm going to listen to Howard because even though I haven't listened to him in years, there's something about the voice that I'm so familiar with that it might just calm me down and make me think of him old. And I listened to him, and I had to switch it off after 20 minutes, and I felt worse because he was so neurotic, negative, full of fear. And I just thought, this fucking asshole, he has no respect for his audience. He's not even trying to put on a brave face and make people feel better. All he's capable of doing is reproducing and spilling out his own selfish fucking garbage. Like, it was awful. I've never listened since. He's,
as opposed to the 9/11 show where he broadcast throughout the entire thing, or through most of it anyway. But I remember, for everybody who brings that up as that's when he was there for the vans. people seem to forget that he was also saying every 10 minutes, Tom, can I go now?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was.
And believe me, I get it. You're in a high rise. You when's the next plane coming in? I get it. But he wasn't doing it out of some kind of loyalty to the fans or anything. He was doing it because, well, he doesn't have enough of the brains to think of self-preservation in that moment when he thinks, oh, I'm going to have to make up this day if I leave, won't I?
Yeah, he can't. We've discussed this before, that Howard, because of his personality disorders, but that are non-curable. Yep. What he does is, through repetition and almost like in its own cult, like hypnosis, is therapy, and that the therapy tries to. It's probably this kind of cognitive. I don't know what behavioral therapy or whatever. Maybe I think that's more of a valid approach, but certainly the analysis type of therapy is really just getting him to learn a way of behaving. But when he's under pressure, when he's angry, when he's scared, that veneer cracks away, and you see the real person.
Big time. Anyway, guys, that's it for this particular episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. When we follow up next, most likely it'll go on Patreon, as a lot of our sagas do. But that's not just because we're not trying to get you to come over to Patreon. In honesty, it's me being able to put stuff in time for due dates for stuff that needs to be content for that platform as well as YouTube and whatnot. So it's all about what I've got available, what I've got edited as well. And sometimes that happens, and you know what? It doesn't cost you much to find out if you do want to continue down the thread, down the storyline. But we've got some great episodes coming up pretty soon. And by the way, if you got any idea for a dedication on this one for the patrons,
so we would have to have something that would be maybe cult related. Signed. Oh, you know what? I got it. Frank Zappa, Token of My Extreme, off Joe's Garage. That's a song about the first church of Appliantology, which is at PT. It's where he completely takes the piss out of Scientology. That's close enough for this.
Do you want the live version or do you want the studio?
I like the studio one because you can hear it's really funny, like what he talks about. So in the song, it might be better this record version.
All right, fair enough. We'll have that one. Thank you for sticking through this one, brother, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys.
Thanks, folks.
Johnny was going to call in with the
later, man. Good, thanks for calling.
All right, Eric.
Announcement.
Take
today,
care, buddy.
He sprained his ankle.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Hey, Eric, I got to run a little.
Take care, buddy.
All right, thanks, Eric.
Oh, wait.
Go fuck yourself.
Anyone looking to go to any concerts this summer?
No.
Check out. Get pre.
No one wants to go. We'll see you, buddy. Bye.
Hank, you're on the air.
Hey now, Howard. Howard.